Alaska Airlines has teamed up with Hawaiian Airlines to create new nonstop international flights. Go to alaskaair.com or hawaiianairlines.com, and I'll tell you more details later in the show. I'm Rachel Belle, and this is Your Last Meal, the show where celebrities share stories about the foods they love most, and we dig into the history, culture, or science of those meals with experts from around the world. Today, we have a very special episode of Your Last Meal. You get to hear the live podcast taping I did at Cascade PBS Ideas Festival earlier this summer. In just a few seconds, I will give her a full and proper introduction, but I was lucky enough to be joined on stage with Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal. Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? Welcome to Ideas Fest, first one of the day. I'm Rachel Belle. I host the Nosh on Cascade PBS. I have a cookbook called Open Sesame, 40% off Amazon right now. ABP, always be plugging. Yeah. And you are here today for Your Last Meal with, of course, Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal. Give a big round of applause.
Thank you.
This is the 9th year in August that I've made this show, and I've had many actors, musicians, filmmakers, cooks. The woman who invented Prancer Size has been on the show. But this is the first time I've had an elected official. So this is very exciting. And I'm so glad that it's
loves
you.
food.
One who loves food, yes. So I'm going to do your official introduction here. Congresswoman Jayapal is serving her 5th term in Congress, representing Washington's 7th district. So if you live in most parts of Seattle, Shoreline, Vashon Island, Lake Forest Park, parts of Burien and Normandy Park, she is probably your representative. She's the first South Asian American woman elected to the House of Representatives. She serves on many committees, so many I'm not going to list them all.
Please don't.
But is a leader on immigration rights, LGBTQ and transgender equality, and healthcare. And she has written 2 books. Please welcome again Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal to the show. So before you were in politics, you still consider yourself this, you're an activist. You started One America. You were executive director, which is the largest immigrant advocacy group in Washington state. And you thought that that was a better way to make change.
Yes.
So I'm curious what inspired you to run in the first place, go into politics?
Well, I guess I, had worked on federal issues, state issues, and I kept looking around and thinking about how I had to convince all these people in elected office to do the things I knew we needed to do. And I realized that I was looking at elected office in the wrong way, that it wasn't just about policy development and legislation, but it was actually about organizing. It was an organizing platform. And if I could organize on the inside of Congress and organize on the outside and bring the two together to create a more powerful movement for justice, then that seemed like an incredible thing. And I also will say I kept looking, there were not a lot of people that looked like me in office. And so I had to explain about things like English language, as English as a second language, or what immigration law was, or any of these other things. And I felt like we needed more representation of people who looked like me. And so that was another piece. But, it was, I like to think of myself still as an organizer because that is what I'm doing in Congress. It's just a new platform for doing it.
Yeah, backstage I said, what do you want to be called? Politician? Elected official? And you go, I'm an activist.
I said activist organizer because I still think of myself that way. Yeah.
And you were saying that food is actually a big part of organizing.
It is a really big part. Look at all these people nodding because they've been organizers too. You have to have food if you want people to come to your things. So, it's a bribe. Yes, it is. It's a bribe. But it's also this incredible opportunity to showcase the cultures that you are organizing with. And because I was doing immigrant rights, we were just so blessed because we would have different kinds of foods. If we were in the Latino community, it would be food from Latin America. If we were organizing with the African community, we had African, food from across Africa, Asia, same thing. So it just became this wonderful way to also celebrate the diversity of culture. And really, there's no gathering that's good without food. That is my personal
free
belief.
pizza. We learned in elementary school, if you read the most books, books, you get a pizza party in class. That was the best part.
See,
you remember that?
That's right.
Yeah,
exactly.
So you lived in 4 countries by the time you were 16.
Yes.
Talk about where you grew up, and when you were 16, you moved to the States to go to school. We'll talk about that a little later, but talk about the first 3 places where you grew up.
Yeah. Well, I was born in India, in South India, in Madras, but I'm a Malayali, if there are any Indians in the room. I'm from Kerala, which is known for its curries and its coconut and its fish and seafood, but also, of course, vegetables of all kinds. And so that was the first country. The second country was Indonesia. We moved to Indonesia when I was 5 years old. And so I was in Jakarta when there was one hotel in Jakarta. It was called Hotel Indonesia. And I lived in Indonesia for a total of about 12 years. With a break in between, we moved to Singapore for a couple of years. And so I got to live there as well, which is another place, just a culinary extravaganza, food from all over the world.
The hawker stalls.
Yes, exactly. All the hawker stalls, a real mix of Chinese food, Indian food, and Singaporean food, which is sort of Malay food, which is kind of similar to Indonesian as well. But and then moved to the United States when I was 16. So those were my 4.
So talking about all of that wonderful food, the thing you really wanted was Pringles.
Okay. It's true. It's true because I was in Indonesia. My parents did not have a lot of money. They sent me to the United States by myself when I was 16 with their last $5,000, right? So when Pringles came into the market, it was expensive to get it in Indonesia. And so my mom, as a treat, would buy a can of Pringles. And when I got home from school, she would hand out, and I checked this with her memory to say, am I remembering this correctly? She would give me 4 to 5 Pringles. A little stack of 4 to 5 Pringles. And I loved those things. They really do fit on your tongue.
Yes.
They're so good. They're so salty. They're so crispy. And so when I came to the United States and I finally was able to earn a little bit more money and I could buy my own can of Pringles, I ate the entire can just because I could. And I still, to this day, love Pringles, and I really have to stop myself from buying it, except when I don't. Like yesterday, I was telling Rachel I went to the Northwest Detention Center for an unannounced surprise visit, and it was a 5-hour thank you. It was a 5-hour thing. It was very stressful. I spoke with detainees. It was heartbreaking, legal permanent residents who were in there. And I got done with the visit. We stopped at the gas station to go to the bathroom. And guess what I bought?
What flavor?
I bought, only because I was pressured, I bought sour cream and onion.
Who did this to you?
Not my favorite.
Who pressured you?
One of my team who said she was going to eat some of them. And I think maybe she had 3 or 4. And I think I ate the entire rest of the can. At the end of a Pringles can, there are some broken chips. The best way to eat those is to pour it into your mouth. Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right.
Congresspeople, they're just like us. So since you were born in India, and is that where your parents are from?
Yes.
So
and my mom still lives there.
Is still there.
They never were able to come. It took me 17 years to get my citizenship, and by the time I could sponsor them to come, they were already settled and too old. So we've never lived on the same continent as many immigrants. You sacrifice a lot, you gain a lot, and you sacrifice a lot.
So what was eating like at home? Did they carry the food that they knew with them to all these other countries, or were they picking up dishes along the way?
Both. I mean, my mom was an amazing cook. My grandmother was an amazing cook. And so it was both. We had a lot of Indian food, and that is still, very important in my life. And then we had a lot of food from other places. I mean, we had Indonesian food. We ate a lot of sattés when we were in Indonesia. I love peanut sauce because that's very central in Indonesian food. I love really good Chinese food because I got a lot of it in Singapore. And I'm sorry to tell you, there's not a ton of places in the United States that make it like that. But, pepper crab from the seashore in Singapore is just phenomenal. So yes, a mixture of all.
And then you would go back and visit your grandparents in India, and that was special.
Right. That was really special. Once a year, well, about once a year, we would try to go back to India, and they lived in Madras, now called Chennai. And my grandmother was just an amazing, amazing cook, and she made everything on her own. I mean, everything was fresh. And so my favorite part of those visits was we would have to take a nap in the afternoon, which was not so bad because it was very hot, and it was just so peaceful. You know, you would hear the rooster. She had chickens in the back, and so you'd hear the chickens in the back. You'd hear the roosters in the morning. And so we'd take a nap, and then she would wake us up, and we'd rub the sleep out of our eyes, and then we would be led to the dining room table. And my grandfather, my grandmother, and the two of us, my sister and I, and my parents, when they were there, sometimes they traveled and they would leave us for a week or something with my grandparents, would all sit around the table, and there was this spread, tea time spread. 4:00, you had savory, so things like pakoras and budgies, which are potato. Everything was fried. I mean, I just love fried. It's genetic. I don't know what to say. And just these wonderful snacks, and then also sweets. So a lot of barfis made out of coconut milk, other kinds of sweets. And then they would have chai, and when we were older, we had chai too, but sometimes we would get a limca, which is a soda that came in a little bottle that was like a lime soda kind of thing. That was a special treat.
I bet that would go well with Pringles.
You know, I never wanted Pringles when I had her pakoras. It was like, who would pick? Okay, well, that's a tough one. But I think I would pick my grandmother's pakoras over the Pringles.
So you move here at 16. You're on your own.
Yeah.
What were you homesick for, and how did you find that comfort? Like, did you find community here? Did you have to learn how to cook suddenly? Did you know how to cook?
I learned how to cook. I don't remember when. I think I must have learned it here because I never cooked there.
Yeah.
But I was in the kitchen a lot. I would help my mother a lot with cooking. But when I moved here, yes, I was homesick for a lot of things.
Yeah.
And, I really missed doshas. Doshas are kind of a staple of South Indian food. It's like a crepe made out of lentils and rice, and you grind those, and you eat it with something called pudi. And it's like we call it gunpowder, but it's like a chilies that are, powdered and then mixed with spices. And so that in Washington, D.C., where I went to college, I was able to find some of that.
Oh, good.
And Ethiopian restaurants in Washington were just kind of beginning, believe it or not. Adams Morgan was pretty, there were maybe 3 or 4 Ethiopian restaurants. And so there were a lot of spices that were similar. So I would seek out some of those things if I couldn't find the exact thing. But some of the best doshas were in New York City, actually, right at Greenwich Square Park. There was a guy with a cart, and he would make doshas then and there.
I know that cart.
He's very famous.
Yeah.
He became quite famous.
Yes.
But, I would find places like that. But I learned to cook. I mean, I love cooking. It is a release from the stress of my life. It's comforting to me, and I definitely have comfort foods that help kind of keep me going, and many of them are Indian or have flavors from the places that I've lived.
Were you able to call your mom and ask her, how do I make this? Because this was a time of long distance.
Yes, but she and my grandmother are hopeless. They would say,
there's no measurement.
Ittari is like this little in Malayalam, right? So ittari, and I'm like, what is that? Is that like a teaspoon? Is that a tablespoon? What is ittari? I don't know. So she was pretty hopeless that way.
We've heard this so much on the show. Everybody complains of this, especially immigrant parents, that you have to be by their side. You have to cook with them
if you want with these recipes. And then you have to write things down. Yeah. And over the years, I do use recipes, but I just vary them. I find a lot of times the spice isn't quite right for me. And so I'm not somebody who just creates food. My daughter is like that, but She just creates things. She doesn't need recipes. But I tend to use a recipe and then color outside the lines, which you could use to say a lot about my life. But
a metaphor. So speaking of comfort foods, I found this essay that you wrote online in 2005 after the Indian Ocean earthquake and tsunami at the end of 2004, where hundreds and thousands of people were killed, many from Indonesia. You wrote, I'll read the first paragraph. That morning, as the Seattle rain pounded the windows, time seemed suspended. I cooked that whole week, all South Indian food. Fish fried the way the fishermen do on the beaches of Kerala, straight from the sea. Curries rich with fresh coconut and coconut milk. Lentils topped with mustard seeds and bay leaves that have been quickly fried to bring out their aroma. How we cope with disasters is personal. Our reactions sometimes as awkward as the motions of a child learning to walk. Can you talk about just why you decided to go to the kitchen that day?
I had forgotten all about that essay. I think I wrote it for Orion magazine.
That's right.
I was a columnist for Orion also for about a year and a half. I think food it's a reminder of so many things. It's a solace for so many things. And it's a commitment to so many things. And I think that I was trying to get at all of that because I think in the wake of that disaster, and we have so many disasters, I think about all the things that are wiped out. We think a lot about physical structures when we have disasters. We think about homes being destroyed. We think about, people losing belongings. But I think we also lose this sense of groundedness. And when your life is constant, I think about this with immigrants too, not just natural disasters, but when you move countries and you don't have a place that you can call home, you don't have a place that you can cook the things that give you comfort, there's so much that's lost. And so it becomes both a reminder and a coping mechanism. And I think for me in that moment, I just wanted to feel the comfort of just being able to hold the pain of all the people that had suffered in that moment.
Are there other times in your life where you've just went on these cooking rampages? Are you a procrastinator, which is a term that came out?
I'm not a huge baker. Mm-hmm. I did it when my ex-husband got remarried. His wife, who's a very good friend of mine now, was an extremely good baker, and she would make all these Christmas cookies. And I got really jealous. I was like, I'm not a good mom if I don't also make all these Christmas cookies. I'm not particularly good at it. I have like one or two cookies that I think I'm very good at. One with molasses and ginger that's to die for.
Yes.
Yeah. But no, I'm not I will bake from time to time, but it's not the thing that gives me joy. The thing that gives me joy is smelling the onions when they're being sautéed, putting the mustard seeds on, we call it rye, the little black mustard seeds on, and creating a temper for my curries. That smells so good. Watching the chilies. Okay, yeah, I need to go back to writing about food, don't I?
Yes, it was so well written, actually. I loved reading that essay.
I forgot all about that essay.
That was 20 years ago.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I interviewed someone this week who was saying that, I remember that movie Clueless, it was like, put cookies in the oven to make it feel like a home.
Yes.
And he said that when he feels sad or lonely, he sautés onions and garlic just so that the smell fills the house. Yeah,
it's so good. Yeah. I'll never turn down a good baked dish, by the way. So, anybody who wants to send me cookies, no problem.
I want to hear where you eat, how you eat when you're in D.C., because I had Dan Pfeiffer on the show many years ago, who is the co-host of Pod Save America, and he was President Obama's senior advisor. Yeah. And he talked about getting to eat in the Navy mess, which sounds like, in my mind, when he said that, just some very casual cafeteria, but he said it was very fancy and it was only for people who worked in the West Wing.
Yeah.
And they had these seals they used to press the butter so that it had the United States seal was the little butter pellet. But when I looked at the menu, it was written in this fancy cursive, like it was the Declaration of Independence. But some menu items included non-fat hot dogs. How do you do that? And peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And I'm thinking, like, they're pressing the butter and they're eating. So where do you eat? Is there a congressional cafeteria? Do you get to eat in the Navy mess?
We have a couple of cafeterias. They're not particularly good. They are trying to get more fresh stuff into those cafeterias. We don't have a mess like that. I have eaten at the White House mess.
How is it?
It's fine.
Okay.
Okay. It's fine. I mean, okay, if you want me to do like a little humble brag here, when I was in the midst of negotiating Build Back Better, which had we passed that and the Progressive Caucus made sure it passed the House, we would have had universal child care and investments into housing. Sorry, I have to bring a little bit of politics in.
Yeah.
But we were in the midst of pushing for that when the Senate just wanted to pass an infrastructure bill. And so the president actually invited me to have breakfast in the one of the rooms at the White House. And it just sort of happened very suddenly. I was on Rachel Maddow, and he called me after it, and he said, "Hey, Pramila, it's Joe Biden." And I was like, "Oh, hi, Mr. President." And he's like, "We really need to talk about this. We have to get this done, you know." And I'm like, "Well, I'm available anytime." And he said, "Well, do you want to come over to the White House and we can have a meeting?" And so literally the next morning, I went over for breakfast. I think I was the first member of Congress to ever be invited to do that because it was coming out of COVID.
Wow.
And no staff, just the president and me. And the night before, he says to me, "What do you like to eat?" And I said, "Anything. I'm fine. Anything. Whatever you want to serve me." He's like, "No. What's? They can make anything here. What would you really like?" And
this
I
is
said,
the
"Well,
moment."
Yeah, I said, "I'd like an eggs Florentine, please." And he said, "Okay, great. We'll do an eggs Benedict, eggs Florentine. No bacon and would you like some pastries?" I said, "Sure, I like savory pastries." And he said, "What would you like to drink?" I said, "How about an oat milk latte?" And so
he's
literally
taking your
this
order.
is like the conversation I'm having. And I'm like, "And could I also put universal childcare, universal housing, raise the minimum wage? Could you give me those things on the menu? Because I would trade the Benedict for that." So that was pretty wonderful. And I will say there was no staff in the room. And I was struggling to eat because it was really good. But I also had a pen in my hand and my glasses and my list of things that I needed to go through. So, I can't say I tasted the food the way I might have in a fine restaurant that it was.
What was the room like? Where were you seated?
It was really beautiful. I keep thinking it was the Roosevelt Room, but I'm not sure if it was or not. So I don't remember. But it was this gorgeous room. There's some pictures online. We can send them to you if you want to post them.
Okay.
Of him and me at the dining table. No staff. It was just the two of us negotiating what was going to be in the bill. And the room was beautiful. I mean, gorgeous colors and, White House is beautiful. And at the end, I remember leaning across the table to him and saying, kind of embarrassed, I said, "Mr. President, would you mind if we got a photo for my mom? She can't believe that her daughter from a little village in India is sitting across the table from the President of the United States." And he leans across the table to me and he says, "Of course." He says, "My mom can't believe that her son from Scranton, Pennsylvania is the President of the United States."
And he took the selfie himself because he took your order and he does everything.
No, they have White House photographers, and there were really beautiful pictures. That will be in the archives, which is a pretty special thing. Yeah.
Coming up after the break, Congresswoman Jayapal tells me what she really thought of the food in America when she immigrated here at 16 years old. And probably regrettably, she has a few things to say about her husband's feet. These days, more than ever before, I am looking to work with businesses that share my values. So a few years back, when I was looking for a new place to bank, I chose BECU. Not only because BECU is a not-for-profit, member-owned credit union for folks living in Washington state, but also because they gave more than $7 million to support local communities last year alone. And they promote social equity. But I really do love that BECU is a nonprofit. That means when I go in and sit down with an advisor or talk with someone over video chat or online chat, they are focused on helping me make the best decisions for my bank account and my financial goals. and they can offer great rates and low fees on products and services. BECU can assist with retirement savings, business services, and establishing good money habits and financial stability. There are 65 branches of BECU financial centers around Washington state, but we also have access to 30,000 ATMs across the country. Join me and 1.5 million others. Learn more at becu.org. Let's say that you were president, you would kind of lose your ability to cook. I mean, I've interviewed many White House chefs, and you're kind of not allowed in the kitchen anymore. How would you feel about that?
The White House has its own kitchen where you can cook, but I think the challenge, and it's a challenge for me in my job, and I'm not the president of the United States, it's the time. It's the time, it's the stress of thinking about what you want to cook and what you need, and then you're exhausted, and then you come home, and it's a lot easier to eat a can of Pringles than it is to cook your favorite thing. So I think that's the real challenge. There are spaces in the White House where you could cook if you wanted, but do you? Probably not.
Probably not. Yeah. Chelsea Clinton did learn to cook, though, in the White House. There's these stories of her baking cookies and things like that. So after 9/11, you started One America, which I mentioned in the introduction, the immigrants' right organization. I couldn't think of what my question is surrounding this, but I'm just going to lay out all my thoughts and we can see what happens.
Okay.
Because one of the things that I love about doing this show and why I think there's so much to talk about with food that is so deep is because politics and immigration are so wrapped up in food.
Yes.
It's why we eat what we eat in this country. Like, there's a reason that there are more pho restaurants than Starbucks in Seattle.
That's right.
And it comes, from the 70s and Governor Dan Evans. There's a whole story there.
Right. Totally.
Al pastor, which a lot of people think of as traditional Mexican food, that was brought from Lebanon. Initially it was lamb on a spit and pita, and then the Mexican people made it pork and tortillas eventually. So I don't know. Like, what are your thoughts just in general, or things you've observed over the years, just this tie between the importance of immigration and food?
I mean, it's so essential. And I think Chef Andres, does a great job talking about this. Jose Andres, Anthony Bourdain. I mean, so many of the chefs actually are great spokespeople on immigration because they understand that we could not eat the way we eat without immigrants. And sometimes the right wing gets on me because they say that I'm just trying to exploit immigrants, when I talk about this. But no, this is an essential part of our economy, of our culture, of our homes. And you cannot eat without immigrants because there are probably a lot of immigrants who picked the food that you're eating. There's probably a lot of immigrants who are back of the house, front of the house, cooks, chefs, every part of any restaurant you eat at. There are probably a lot of immigrants who started those restaurants. And so at every level, immigration is just so central to eating in this country and to so many things actually in this country. But it's also, I think, just such a celebration. I mean, who doesn't go into a restaurant and maybe if you just don't have a tongue and you're not interested in food, and, I don't know, you wouldn't be in this room probably. But, but really, to be able to think about what a flavor meant to an immigrant in Latin America, and how they were cooking, or in India or wherever, and how they were cooking. And I lived in villages for a couple of years on a fellowship in India. And, the things that people do with so little, right? Like we have these fancy stoves and, all these different things. No, there's like a charcoal pit or maybe some wood, and they've made these amazing dishes. Just with so little. And so I think for me, I think about immigration as being so central to every part of who we are as a country. It is actually very unique that America ties its identity as a nation of immigrants to immigration. That's not true in many other countries in the world. It may have become that way, but it's not tied as a central part of our identity in the same way. And at the same time, if you look at our immigration system in the United States, it's been a very love-hate relationship with immigrants. I mean, sometimes we've excluded Chinese and Indians and so many others, and other times we've changed policy and we've welcomed in. And it's also been quite racist, and it's also been quite sex exclusionary. Most of the visas that are allowed are for the high-tech fields, but not necessarily for the caregivers, not necessarily for the service workers. So, it's an issue, obviously, I care deeply about, but I think it's so central to who we are, and certainly to food, to culture, to life, to vitality, to all the things that eating and cooking give us.
And I think we take it for granted. I mean, you walk down the street on the Ave, for example, and you can just go down, 15 different countries by the time you get to the end of the street. And I mean, even Taco Bell, we wouldn't have Taco Bell. And I think people forget that. And people have different political views, and they forget that they would lose all of these things that they love.
Yeah. There's pretty much nothing that would function if all the immigrants in the United States were to leave or to stop working. And I'm sure you've seen that movie, A Day Without Immigrants, or you can check it out. But because I think there's, if you stay in a hotel, if you eat in a restaurant, if you work in a cancer research center, if you go to a hospital, I mean, it's immigrants everywhere. And all of us are connected in some way to the history of immigration. Slaves who were brought over on slave ships unwillingly. All the way to people who flee war and persecution and economic disaster and come to this country for a better life. It's really so central.
I want to go back to when you first arrived here. Did you have any culture shock? What did you think of American food at first?
I feel like this is dangerous territory for a politician.
This is a safe space.
But it's going to go out all over. Okay, I'm just going to be honest. It was not great. It was not great. I'm still not a peanut butter fan. I don't like peanut butter and jelly, right? The only way I'll eat it is on a crisp Washington apple. If I have a slice of apple, I do like peanut butter.
Yeah.
Chunky, not creamy. This is all going to get me in so much trouble.
Big creamy's coming for you.
And one of my first jobs, because, we had no money and I wasn't eligible for student aid, so I worked in the cafe. I had a work-study thing. I worked in the cafe at Georgetown, and my job was to make tuna salad. And I had to I had these plastic gloves that would break at the fingertips, and I had to stick my hands in the mayonnaise and in the tuna, and I had to make the tuna salad, and I made a very good tuna salad. I always wanted to add spice to it, but, which I didn't. But, I wasn't, it was hard. I mean, I was eating meat back then. Now I'm a pescatarian, so I really don't eat meat. So I had more options, but it was not comfort food, you know, and so that was challenging. And every place I went, in Chicago, I found Devon Street right away. I found the Indian places. In New York City, at that time, I think it was like 14th Street that had all the Indian restaurants. So I would find those places, but it was hard. It wasn't the hardest part. The hardest part was having to wear socks. I still, my staff always has to come in to check in my office if I have my shoes on before we welcome people into the office, so I can look congressional with my shoes, because I always take my shoes off. I just do not like socks. I don't like socks.
For those in the back, shoes. She's not wearing socks right now.
It's summertime, which is one of the great things about summer. I don't have to wear. Whereas my husband, who grew up in Pittsburgh, he's like that guy in the ads with the he doesn't wear Birkenstocks, but with like sandals and socks all the time. I will say that his feet are baby soft. I mean, quite stunningly soft. Anyway, this is a lot of information.
This is what happens. I could picture his feet when you said that, and I was like, I wonder if she has a picture in her wallet of these little baby feet.
My husband is really not going to be happy when he hears about this.
Do you remember your first Thanksgiving?
Yeah, I do, because I was so blessed in college. I lived right next door to my to the person that became my best friend all through college, and we're still in touch now. And she was from a family of six, and they lived in 6 girls, and they lived in Bethesda, Maryland. And her family just adopted me, and they would bring me cookies, and they would take me home for vacations because we didn't have enough money. I went home once a year, and we only had one phone call a year too, because back then there was no Skype. I mean, I'm not that old, but this is the 80s. Okay, this was the 80s, and there was only a hall phone, and so I got one phone call home a year. So my sophomore year of college, I used my one phone call to call my father and tell him that I was going to be an English literature major instead of an economics major. And then I held the phone away from my ear like this as he screamed at me and said, I didn't send you to the United States to learn how to speak English. You already know how to speak English. But I think that first Thanksgiving, the Dietrichs invited me over to their home, and it was just so wonderful. It was filled because all the girls had, boyfriends or husbands or whatever. I guess it would have been boyfriends at the time. And so there were just people all over, I think they watched a football game. I had to learn about football. I do know about it now, I promise. Seahawks, go Seahawks. So it was just wonderful and she was an amazing cook, really an amazing cook. So, and she loved cooking, and she loved, making stuff for all of us. So that was really beautiful.
Let's go to your husband. We'll go back to your husband, not his feet. Talk about in the early years, there was a night when he made pasta.
Yes. My husband is a wonderful man. He does not like to cook. He loves to eat, but he would be quite happy to have peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and pickles and just forage out of the fridge. He doesn't need to have a warm meal. I don't understand it. And actually, I do, and there's a serious side to that story. His mom was a single mom who was widowed when Steve was 6. His father committed suicide. So, you don't have a lot of time to make food. So food was just never a central part of, I get that.
Yeah.
So he comes into our house, and I have my daughter at the time I guess she would have been 6 or 7. And he wants to impress me, and he would like to learn to cook because he knows it's important to me. Isn't that beautiful? And so
were you still dating, or were you married?
We were still dating.
Okay.
Yeah, we were still dating. And so he decides he's going to make pasta. Quite simple. May have been from a jar sauce. I'm not sure. Maybe he added some onions or garlic or something. And because I wanted to get him to cook more, I was extremely laudatory. And I praised him to high heaven. How delicious was the pasta. This is so great. You're definitely going to be a chef. You're going to be able to
Can't believe you opened that jar all by yourself.
Yes, it was wonderful. The pasta is al dente, perfect. And my daughter was not happy about all this praise going to this guy who had just walked into our house. And so she was like, well, that's not very hard. I can do better. So she, a week later, made handmade pasta.
6 years old?
She was 7, maybe.
7.
And she rolled it out, and she made it, and it was quite phenomenal. And she is now 27, and she has become a fantastic chef. And she still credits it to that jealousy and the praise and the fact that she wanted to outdo my husband. And he has become an excellent omelet maker. His omelets are to die for, like better than any restaurant in Seattle. So 2 birds with 1 stone. I got 2 chefs in the family with that incident.
I love that story.
We are going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we finally get to hear what Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal chose for her last meal. These days, more than ever before, I am looking to work with businesses that share my values. So a few years back, when I was looking for a new place to bank, I chose BECU. Not only because BECU is a not-for-profit, member-owned credit union for folks living in Washington state, but also because they gave more than $7 million to support local communities last year alone. And they promote social equity. But I really do love that BECU is a nonprofit. That means when I go in and sit down with an advisor or talk with someone over video chat or online chat, they are focused on helping me make the best decisions for my bank account and my financial goals. And they can offer great rates and low fees on products and services. BECU can assist with retirement savings, business services, and establishing good money habits and financial stability. There are 65 branches of BECU financial centers around Washington state, but we also have access to 30,000 ATMs across the country. Join me and 1.5 million others. Learn more at becu.org.
Let's talk about your last meal. What would your last meal be?
Well, I thought about this a lot, actually, and it came to me so quickly that I was surprised. Like, I kept thinking about it because I was like, am I sure? Because this is a serious question you're asking on your podcast.
I know. When people ask me, I'm like, why do I ask anyone this? It's so hard.
Really
it's a terrible
tough,
question.
I know.
Yeah.
But I realized the answer was the same every time. And I actually talked to my daughter about it. I would have a thali. So a thali is, it literally translates to plate. You can get South Indian thalis, you could get North Indian thalis, depending on the area, and you have lots of little things, and it's very well balanced. So Ayurveda loves thalis because you have lots of different flavors, they're all balanced, and you get to try a lot of things. It's the same reason I love tapas, because you get to have a lot of things, because it's hard for me to have one favorite when it comes to food. And so my thali would be unusual in that it would mix North Indian and South Indian. So I would definitely have a dosha. I would definitely have in my little katoris, I would have a drumstick curry, which my grandmother used to make all the time. And even now when I go back, my mother makes it on the first day for me because I love, you use your nail to kind of split open the drumstick and then you sort of suck on it and it's absolutely fantastic.
The marrow?
Yeah.
My parents did that when I was growing up too.
Yeah, it's really good. And it's you make it with a tomato onion sauce, so that kind of gives it the flavor.
You must have to cook it down for a long
You
time.
do. You have to cook it down for a long. But if you get the really fresh ones, the ones you get here are not so great. But if you get the really fresh ones, and then I would have a curd, a yogurt, which is so delicious in India. The yogurt there is really, it has a little bit of a sour taste to it. Greek yogurt might be the closest you can get here. And then I would have like a paneer, masala, paneer tikka masala. I would have a fried fish because it's really delicious. And then, usually there are some pickled vegetables that also give it that sour taste. And then I would have payasam for dessert, which is a very meaningful, it's usually made on all of the big holidays, your birthday. My mother makes it for me. The first day I come home to visit, she always makes payasam. And it's a vermicelli noodles cut up and then cooked with ghee and milk and sugar and nuts. Nuts sprinkled on top.
Is it kind of custardy or more milky?
It's kind of similar to kheer. It's a little bit similar to kheer. So it's a more liquidy version of that, but it's usually blessed. They'll bless it in temples. They'll bless it at home in front of her altar. So it's very meaningful to me. And then I would have papadum with that as well. So papadum is the very crunchy. You roast it, and the South Indian papadum puffs up. The North Indian papadum is flat and has cumin seeds in it. And that's also very good, but I would have South Indian papadum, which you fry or roast, and it puffs up, and it's fantastic. And that would make me so happy with the life I've lived.
Have you had that exact meal before?
Not exactly, because I really threw in a lot of things. Oh, I forgot to mention chana. I would have chana masala, which is my favorite thing that I cook. In fact, a member of Congress was my dear friend Veronica Escobar was visiting Seattle because her daughter's moving here, and and we had just had our big event, and I really didn't want to go out. I love you all, but sometimes when I go out, it's hard to have a meal. And so I said, just come over to the house. And so in half an hour, I cooked up a chana masala and a spinach and mushroom curry. And she was so happy because they had been moving Eloisa the whole week, and it was just a chance to sit back. But so I would have chana on my thali,
Okay.
too. Yeah.
You mentioned Ayurveda. Do you practice Ayurveda?
No, not really, but I've dabbled in it a lot over the years, and I think it's got a lot to it. And I do think, I know I'm Vata Pitta.
I was going to ask you what your
I'm
dish
Vata
is.
Pitta, which makes sense because I'm kind of manic with my energy, you know. And you have to be as an organizer in this job, I think. But I think it just makes a lot of sense that there are foods that go with your system, with your personality, but really more fundamentally with the way your body works. Our bodies process different foods differently. And I think that's really, Ayurveda is both about temperament and it's about body construction. So it's sort of about all of those things together.
It's about balance. Yeah, some of it's very practical. If you run cold, then you should, have warm things and warm spices and vice versa.
Yes.
Yeah, I did one consultation. I was very interested, and I don't really do any of it either, but I love thinking about it and talking about it. Yeah. Who would you spend your last meal with? Who would you want to share this meal with?
It would be with my family. It would be with my husband, my daughter, my dog.
What's your dog's name?
Otis. Otis is going to be 14 in December. Sometimes people see Steve walking Otis and they're like, that's Congresswoman Jayapal's dog. And because Otis is very popular on my social media. My father just passed away in January.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
And so he wouldn't be there, but my mom would, and my sister and my nieces and nephews. As many people as wanted to come for that last meal from my family, I would love, because that is the center. You know, my parents have sacrificed so much, and I get so much from the people that are close to me.
And that was Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal's last meal. Your Last Meal is a product of Seattle's Cascade PBS. Go to cascadepbs.org to become a member and support local media. You've probably heard that we lost all of our federal funding, and for as low as $5 a month, you get on-demand access to all PBS programming. So being a member has its perks. This episode was recorded by production engineer Rusty Bugcall and mixed and mastered by Sarah Bernard. Original theme music by Prom Queen. I created, host, and co-produce Your Last Meal. Make sure and pop back into the Your Last Meal feed next Thursday for The Leftovers with Congresswoman Jayapal. The Leftovers are our bi-weekly mini episodes where I do a fun little lightning round with my guests. Oh, and have you left a review of this show on Apple Podcasts? Reviews help get Your Last Meal out to more people, and it's just the easiest, freest way to support the show. We would be so grateful if you took just a moment to either give us 5 stars or write a review. And last but not least, I have a bi-weekly food newsletter. It's free. It's called The Nosh. There is a link to sign up in the show notes. I'm Rachel Belle, and this is Your Last Meal.